So before we start the video, I'd like to ask you guys to please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, as it helps the channel grow. So let's get into it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to spend a little time with me, your boy KT. I figured it is time to start getting some of these recaps out for the NFL season as it is winding down. We got the Super Bowl coming up in the next week, and I figured why not get a head start on ranking some of these teams and how they did this season in 2025. Now, it is a little bit early. The season is not over yet, but I figured get a head start on it now. We're going to go division by division. We're going to start with the NFC North. We're going to go top to bottom, and we're starting from the top, we're going to start with the hometown Chicago Bears. This season, they had a very good season. You won the division against all odds, had a lot of elite and good moments this season. So I figured I'm going to kind of put this in a way where I'm going to go position by position on the team, rank them from a scale from elite to good to bad, and go from there. I made a chart in Google Sheets, which will help me with this. So man, this is going to be a very interesting series. I'm going to try to do this for every division before the start of next football season, but at least before the draft starts. So yeah, if you guys like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you guys hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I drop one of these season recap videos. These videos are very difficult to make at times, especially with all the pre-work that goes into them, making charts and stuff. So it would really help your boy out if you guys hit that sub button. Please ignore my heating system in the background is cold up here in Chicago. That's great. So yeah, we're gonna start with going through the recap and stuff. Then we're gonna get into the position group. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight into it. So like I said, we're going to go through each position group on the team and see how I rank them going into the 2025 offseason or 2026 offseason based on how each team's position group performed that season. But before I start into that, just a little bit of context before we start the video. So the Bears went 11-6 this year. They were able to somehow win the division against all odds. What a year for Ben Johnson and this team. The Chicago Bears were one of those teams that most people didn't pick to win at much of anything this year, maybe only 5 games at most. They were expected to be more of a transition team, more of a team that's going to be focusing on development. That did not happen this year. The Bears came out this year, had an incredible season, was able to win the NFC North, but not only do that, they were able to clinch a playoff berth since the first time since 2020, and they were even able to win a playoff game the first time since 2011. They came within 15 yards of advancing to the NFC Championship game. Lots of things to build on for this unit for the Chicago Bears. They have a lot of good players on this team. They do have some things that they need to improve on, and that's what we're going to try to focus on in this video. The Bears this season were one of the better offensive teams in the league. I think they ranked 9th in points per game. I also think they ranked 3rd, 6th, or 10th in the league in yards per game as well. The Bears had their first, they damn near had their first 4,000-yard passer in Caleb Williams. It was a really good year for the Chicago Bears. They were what, 4th in the league, 5th in the league in total yards. They were like 10th or 11th in passing yards, and they were 3rd in rushing yards. Defense was a different story. We'll get to that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start with the quarterback position and where I rank them. I got my handy dandy chart here. We're going to go from top to bottom on this chart and see which positions played the best and which positions need improving on. So I'm excited, guys. Let's get straight into the recap. We are going to start with the quarterback position when I come back. So like I said, we're going to start with the quarterback ranking to start this video off and to start this recap. And as you can see by my chart, I did put Caleb Williams, just for the Bears, I put Caleb Williams in the good category of quarterbacks this year. I thought he played really, really well this year for the Chicago Bears. I was lean. If you want to make a case for it, he was above average to average, you can. Caleb Williams this year was completed 58% of his passes for 3,942 yards. He did break the single season franchise record for passing. Asterisk there, 17 games. Had 27 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions, so a 4-to-8 touchdown percentage and ratio. The main thing that he cut down on this year, going into this year, he had taken 68 sacks in his rookie year. He was able to cut that down to a massive 24 sacks, or a very low 24 sacks, and only gave up 165 sack yards per total. So Caleb Williams, when you look at Caleb Williams, a lot of people are going to point out the accuracy, and a lot of people are going to point out the percentages. And there's a fair reason to do so. There's a lot of times where, you want him to make the simple throw, and it just sails on him, or he misses a read, or he's trying to go for broke every single time, or they're just plain, inaccuracy in some of the more easy throws. But when you look at this guy play football this year, there were some throws that this year, the throws that he made, especially in very, very tight situations, in very, very tight windows, were second to none. He is one of the best improvising quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the best clutch quarterbacks in the NFL as well. And he led this team, despite all of that, this team did finish ranked number 10 in passing, at least throughout every major statistical category. And he didn't turn the ball over much. So it was one of the better teams when it comes to passing. It's just more of the efficiency metrics don't show that. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of drops, a lot of throwaways too. Cutting down on those 68 sacks wasn't easy. Something had to give. It was either going to have to be, he would have to take more sacks or just throw the ball away. So I was really pleased with how Caleb Williams played. Every game, it felt like he was doing something new. He had gained the nickname, the Iceman, for his clutch ability. He led this team to around 7 fourth quarter comebacks within 2 minutes. And that's what good quarterbacks do, man. If he can improve on that accuracy and just making the simple play at times, he can easily find himself in that elite category. But for now, I'm going to keep him in the good category. You can make it a case for above average. Anything below average, you're just being a hater. So I know that's popular to do, but I'm going to put him in the good category. You don't win 11 games and get 7 fourth quarter comebacks by being a bum. So I think he was a really good quarterback this year. If he can improve on some of the efficiency metrics and making a simple play, the arm talent's there, the mobility is there, the clutch gene is there, he will be a really, really good quarterback going forward with Ben Johnson, and a really, really good quarterback going forward in this league. We're going to move on to the running back position, man. And this was one of the strengths of the Chicago Bears this season. So, for the rankings, I put them in the good category. I wouldn't put them in the elite category, but I put them in the good category. This team rushing the football was dynamic all year. They were 3rd in the league in rushing, 9th in the league in rushing TDs. They average, with their yards per attempt, they average around 5 yards per attempt on every single rush. That was also 3rd in the league, only behind, Only behind the, I think it was the Colts. No, it was the Bills and the Ravens who overtook them late in the season. But other than that, the Bears mostly was 2nd in the league in rushing for the majority of the season. DeAndre Swift had a career year this year, rushing for over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry, pitched in with 299 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. Definitely had a resurgent year. The Bears also got a lot of production out of their 7th round rookie, who I think they stole from the beginning in Kyle Monangai, who pitched in with his own 783 yards, 5 touchdowns, and averaged around 4 or 5 yards per carry as well. He even pitched in with some receiving yards, having 164 receiving yards as well. This running back room for the Chicago Bears was a very, very good room, and it was a main reason why this team had the success that it did. It did start well. This running game was pretty much non-existent to start the season. Once they got to that Washington Commanders game, past the bye, this running game really turned on. You felt it. You felt DeAndre Swift running with more physicality. You felt they started using Kyle Monangai a little bit more, and you felt this team when they decided to run the ball. If the O-line created holes, the running backs were running through them. They were gashing teams. One of the best games I can think of for a running back room had to have been the game against the Philadelphia Eagles on Black Friday, where both running backs, carry for over 100 yards, over 100 yards. It was a great game for them, and while I don't think they're in that elite class of backs, with guys like Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, What's the other dude's name? I forgot the other dude's name. Is very good back somewhere else. While these teams had the more elite running backs per se, they did not, or of course James Cook as well. While they had the better backs as well, and while those backs are elite, I felt like the Chicago Bears backs did a really good job at both catching and running the football. They, even with starting the season slow, this was one of the main reasons why this team was really, really good. They ended the year a little slow too once teams started to kind of shift to stacking the box and crashing the line, especially in the playoffs as their left tackle went out. But other than that, I felt like this was a much needed year from the running game, coming from last year where it felt like the Bears couldn't run the ball much at all. Ben Johnson put a lot of stake onto the running game. He likes to run the football. They brought in former running backs coach Eric Bieniemy, who is now with the Chiefs, who had a known pedigree with running backs, and I felt like that was one of the key moves as well. It got DeAndre Swift running a little bit more tough. He was elusive in the open field. Then you could put in Kyle Monangai and use that power back. Despite him being small, he was incredibly physical. Both backs had the ability to catch the ball out the backfield. While they're not elite backs, at least not yet, I would put them in that good category, and I think this could be a category that could also move up into the elite stage, depending on the development of Kyle Monangai, if I do say so myself. So, good ranking for the Chicago Bears running backs. I thought they were excellent this year. It was one of the best seasons running the football that the Bears have had in recent memory, and I thought DeAndre Swift played himself into a really good role on this team, as many people were talking about getting rid of him, and Kyle Monangai was an absolute steal. So I put them in a good category for now. All right. This one is probably going to get people hot. So I know on the chart I have on the screen right now, it should say wide receivers and tight ends. I did not add that in the chart that I initially did, so I apologize for that, but I have it up here now, what I'm looking at. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys, man. I rated this wide receiver and tight end room above average. I'm going to quickly go through this one. On the surface, coming into the year, this was a really, really good wide receiver room. You had the guy that you traded the number 1 pick for in DJ Moore. You had the number 9 pick in the draft 2 years ago in Rome Odunze. You had the number 10 pick this year in Colston Loveland. You picked up Luther Burden in the second round. You signed Olamide Zaccheaus in free agency. You also picked up a good undrafted free agent in Jahdae Walker. And, for the most part, this receiver room did show flashes most of the time. This was a receiving room that did have multiple weapons. It did have a lot of yards after the catch threats coming from that side of the ball. And, I thought while they performed admirably, I put them in the above average category for one thing. And I felt like this group underwhelmed. You look at this group, and with all these names here, Loveland, Burden, Moore, despite, the 2 rookies, and I'm going to make it really clear too, the 2 rookies really, really carried this category as well. Colston Loveland led the team in receiving with 713 yards, really being one of the best rookie tight ends in the entire league, and maybe approaching on superstardom for a tight end. Luther Burden was also a very good pick in the second round. But the main 2 problems I had with this receiving room coming into the year and how they played was the lack of involvement from DJ Moore and Rome Odunze not necessarily living up to that number 9 overall pick. There was a lot of times throughout this year, especially throughout in the playoffs, where you had a lot of drops this year. A lot of drops cost this wide receiver room, a lot of body catching, a lot of wrong routes run, and a lot of miscommunication on the routes as well. And when you look at Caleb Williams' completion percentage, and then you look at the amount of drops that the Bears had, I think Caleb had 32 this year, only second behind Trevor Lawrence. And then you look at some of the things that were happening during the game where guys are running the wrong routes. They're being lazy on their routes, what might have cost them in the playoffs. I kind of expected more from this receiving room, man. We did not have a 1,000-yard receiver this year, and I know that spreading the ball around is really, really good, but I felt like there was a lot of plays to be made by these receivers outside of Luther Burden and Colston Loveland that just wasn't made this season. I know Rome Odunze got hurt, but he struggled with drops too early this season. DJ Moore just never really seemed to be on the same page at all, despite having 6 touchdowns on the year. So while I thought that this position group performed well enough to be above average. When I look at this group on paper, I would expect them to be more consistent at times. And if they were more consistent at times, I can even put them in the good or even elite category for my chart. I did like the emergence of Colston Loveland, especially late in the season, and I thought if he had played more, he probably would have had way more numbers than what he had. Luther Burden as well. If he were to play more over Olamide Zaccheaus, Cole Kmet added some value in there as well. So this wide receiver room has a lot of talent. It just didn't, I wouldn't say it didn't mesh perfectly, but there's definitely some plays to be made on the field that wasn't. And a lot of plays were dropped, and they were costly drops as well, and a lot of costly route running as well. So, when I look at this receiving room, I had to put them in the above average category, as I just didn't think that they lived up to that full potential that they had. I at least expected 1,000-yard receiver, and even if not, even if you just look at the numbers and how the ball was spread around, I would have thought that, the procedural stuff, the running the routes the right way, not getting pre-snap penalties on the line of scrimmage, and then the drops would just not be a thing for guys, especially guys that you gave up a lot of capital for, in future drafts as well. And a guy that you picked number 9 shouldn't still be struggling with catching the ball, with body catching at this point in his career. So that's what kind of docked this a little bit. Despite that, I do think that this receiving core will get better if they keep all these names, especially with more time in Ben Johnson's system. They showed flashes that they could go deep. They showed flashes that they can get a lot of yards after the catch. They showed flashes that they can be clutch, but they just need to put it all together, and this can really be a dangerous wide receiver room going forward, especially with the quarterback that you have. So this is just my opinion. I went with the above average category for the wide receivers and tight ends. But Colston Loveland and Luther Burden really carry that category for me this year, and with how they performed this year. All right, moving on. One elite category on the offense, without a question, was the offensive line. Coming into the year, the offensive line was in shambles, man. It was in shambles. Your quarterback had taken 68 sacks. You had to replace this offensive line with at least 3 more starters, and that they did. They went out in the offseason and traded for Joe Thuney. They went out in the offseason and traded for Jonah Jackson. They got Drew Dahlman in free agency. Darnell Wright was still on that right side. We had no idea who was going to be the left tackle, as it started with Braxton Jones, but quickly moved into rookie tackles over there. And, we didn't really know what Jonah Jackson was going to be able to do this season, especially with his injury history. And this offensive line was just the lifeblood of this team, man. It was dominant at times with this offensive line. Thuney, a Pro Bowler and All-Pro. Drew Dahlman, a Pro Bowler, maybe another All-Pro. Jonah Jackson was getting Pro Bowl votes. He was a pleasant surprise. Darnell Wright is a second-team All-Pro this year. And then you had the emergence of, what's his name, Ozzie Trapillo over there, who they drafted to play left tackle, took him out of the spot in the offseason, and then he has to get thrown in there again because you bench Braxton Jones, put in Theo Benedict. Theo Benedict doesn't work, or at least consistently enough, so you throw in Ozzie Trapillo, and when he took over, that line just turned into a monstrous line. Hopefully he's able to get healthy going into next season. But this was the lifeblood, man. When they were able to impose their will and be physical with teams, especially running the football, which is why the backs had a lot of success that they did. This was one of the best offensive line units in football. The 24 sacks doesn't happen without this unit being around Caleb Williams. For all the credit that we give Williams for being able to extend the play and avoid pressure, this offensive line unit was one of the best in the NFL. And I applaud Ryan Poles in the front office for going out and fixing a clear problem that the Bears had, turning this into a very awful offensive line to a very elite offensive line, in my opinion. This offensive line should get better with time. We know Joe Thuney is getting older, but Drew Dahlman should still be a core piece for them. Jonah Jackson should be a core piece for them, and Darnell Wright is is already becoming a core piece for them going forward. So I was very pleased with how the offensive line played, especially in run blocking. The only problems they had in pass blocking per se, even though that was a little bit of a weaker category, the only problems I really saw with pass protection was when teams would go into heavy blitz packages like Brian Flores, who would disguise blitzes incredibly well. Other than that, this offensive line was one of the best units on this team and was one of the elite units on this team. And I couldn't be more happy of seeing an offensive line play the way they did this year. So hats off to the offensive line. I put them in the elite category for that very reason. So now we move on to one of the weakest units on this team. We finally flip over to the defensive side of the ball, to the D-line. And man, let's talk about this defensive line for a moment. As you can see by the chart, I put them in the bad category. Not awful. They weren't completely awful. But this was a very, very bad unit. The defense for the Chicago Bears in general was a bad unit. They ranked 23rd in points, I think, against, 29th in yards. While they led the league in turnovers, they could not stop the run. They were 27th against the run, and they were 22nd against the pass and 27th against the run. They were not great on third down either this year, especially going late into the year. The only thing that this defense had going for it was indeed the turnovers. And, the main worry that everybody had coming into this season was that this defensive line was not going to be able to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Despite signing Dayo Odeyingbo for $17 million, and despite going out and getting Grady Jarrett, those two signings turned out to be mostly disasters, as Dayo Odeyingbo didn't even get past 5 games before he tore his Achilles, and Grady Jarrett was looked way over the hill this season, and the Bears, like everybody expected them to, struggled to get pressure on the quarterback. I think they had the least amount of sacks this season. I believe at least third. I think they were like third or fourth in sacks this year. It was just a mess with this defensive line. Many times with this defensive line, when you needed to send 4, you could not get consistent pressure enough, despite Montez Sweat having 10 sacks on the season. Despite Austin Booker coming back early or coming back late in the season, showing some promise. Gervon Dexter had the quietest 6-sack season I've ever seen from a defensive tackle. This defensive line was a burden all year, and it cost them in the playoffs too, because when you needed to get consistent pressure on the quarterback, you couldn't, so you would have to send blitzes to be able to get sacks on the quarterback, and that's probably the only reason why they're not ranked last in league in sacks. They also struggled to stop the run this year, as Grady Jarrett and Gervon Dexter could just not stuff up the middle. Andrew Billings was way too fat this year. He weighed about 400 pounds. Shamar Turner barely played for you. When he did play, he showed promise, but he ended up tearing his ACL. So the Bears know what they need to fix going into next season, and that is to get a pass rusher, most likely an edge rusher, as they just could not get anything coming off that opposite side. If it wasn't Montez Sweat, it was nothing, and if it wasn't blitzes, it was definitely nothing. This was one of the units that cost them multiple games this season, not just with the pass rush, but with the run stuffing too. And it is up to Ryan Poles in the front office to try to fix the defensive line, just like they fixed that offensive line. I would keep Montez Sweat and see if I could go out and get a guy like Trey Hendrickson, or maybe trade for a guy like Max Crosby, but we'll see what happens in the offseason. But something definitely needs to be done about this defensive line going into next season. That being said, I did not think they performed awful like some other teams in this division, but I do think they were very, very bad this year at times as well, as they gave up the most yards in the NFL for a reason. And when you can't rush the passer, you can't consistently expect to win games when you can't get off the field, and you can't rush the passer just rushing 4. So they need another defensive end and maybe another defensive tackle, and then we can have this discussion next season about moving them up in the charts. For now, we're going to keep them in the bad category, as I thought this was the weakest unit on the team. And so now we move on to the linebacking unit, and equally the same sentiment I had with the defensive line, I also have with the linebackers as well. The linebackers were below average to me this year. I did not think that they performed well. When you give up, this, what did I say? It was like the 6th most yards in the NFL on the ground. They were 3rd in the yards rushing against them. So 27th ranked in rushing, 22nd ranked in passing. This entire defensive unit had issues. The linebackers weren't, absolved of blame. While I thought they started the year off well, especially with Tremaine Edmonds possibly heading to his career year, he got hurt. He comes out. TJ Edwards started the season hurt with the soft tissue injury, and even when he came back, he looked a little slow. This linebacking unit had some promise in it, especially early in the season, especially with those guys trying to get healthy. You saw a lot of Noah Sewell. You saw a lot of DeMarco Jackson, who I thought personally played well enough this year. He provided a speed edge. They drafted Ruben Hippolyte. They didn't play him much this year, and he ended up getting hurt at some point during this year. So you get the injury to TJ to start the year. TJ comes back. Tremaine goes out. So then you have to play DeMarco Jackson. At one point, both linebackers go out, in TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, and you have to play DeMarco Jackson and Amen Agbagbamiga, who stepped in very well in that Pittsburgh Steelers game. But still, when your two best linebackers are DeMarco Jackson and Amen Agbagbamiga, and you're paying a lot of money to both TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, you expect a lot more production from those two, especially when they came back from injury, when they started to have a lot of the issues. They looked slow. They looked like they couldn't cover anybody. They couldn't stop the run. They weren't filling their gaps. And it felt like DeMarco Jackson was outpacing both of them. And when you're paying a lot of money for two off-the-ball linebackers, they better be some damn good off-the-ball linebackers. Same thing with the defensive line. And now that TJ Edwards is probably going to be out for next season with a broken, fibula, a fractured fibula, it's going to be very difficult to evaluate this linebacker position. They got some decisions coming up, as well as they can cut Tremaine Edmonds to save around $15 million this season and put that to the defensive line. If you ask me, I think DeMarco Jackson should be re-signed, and maybe he can be the starter next year. And then maybe Noah Sewell can fill in as well, as this linebacker unit just doesn't have the speed to keep up. That being said, they weren't awful, they weren't bad, but they were just painfully below average for what you're paying them. And, when you give up as many yards as the Bears did on defense, you got to be ranked one of the lowest teams in the NFL. So, me personally, I thought, they were like third to last in yards given up. Me personally, from what you're paying these guys to play that linebacker position, you expect a lot more production. They were one of the reasons why this defense what it was, as well as that many times they were outside of position, and they made up for it a lot of times with the turnovers. But sometimes when you don't get those turnovers, you just got to stop teams, and they just couldn't do that. Especially stopping the run, this team had lots of issues. So I put them in the below average category for what you're paying these guys, and from the production that you got. Even if they were injured, it's just not enough to be ranked any higher than that. So I went with below average for this category. So moving on, we get to the cornerback room, and this was a pleasant surprise. Despite all the injuries, the cornerback room actually, I thought, played a little bit above average. Now, they weren't a good secondary per se, but they played way above average than I thought they did. Coming into the season, this was one of the strengths of this team, actually, was the secondary, and specifically the corners. You had all-pro and a Pro Bowler in Jalen Johnson. You had a potential Pro Bowl player in Kyler Gordon, who you just played. You had a young guy coming off, still has a lot of talent, in Tyreek Stevenson. You had signed Deshaun Wright. You had Terrell Smith. You drafted Za Frazier. And coming into the season, we thought the secondary would be one of the depth pieces, one of the most deep pieces on this team, and one of the strongest pieces on this team. But the football gods had other plans. The Bears walked into the season missing their top two corners in both Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson. And despite that, so they had to play a lot of Deshaun Wright. And Deshaun Wright, for the most part, played well this season. He was one of the league leaders in turnovers this year. Despite he can be a liability at times in man coverage, I thought he played particularly well. There were games where Tyreek Stevenson also played particularly well. And it felt like, with the emergence of Deshaun Wright, it felt like he kept that cornerback room from just completely plummeting. Then you get guys back later in the year like Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, and that kind of strengthens that room a little bit more Despite that, though, there's still a lot of yards given up, a lot of third down completions that shouldn't have happened, a lot of big plays against this defense, which were directly linked to either the corners or the safeties, especially via miscommunication. Excuse me. You had Jalen Johnson. He looked a little bit slow. Kyler Gordon was in and out, and when he got back, he looked a little slow, even though they played much better in that playoff game, in that playoff series, that playoff game. I personally thought, that the corners played really well, especially from what we expected with an entirely injured cornerback room. I thought Nashawn Wright, who is now a Pro Bowler, filled in well. They have a decision to make on him, whether they're going to pay him. And I just thought Al Harris really worked wonders for this secondary and this cornerback spot. For real, they led the league in turnovers, so that's not anything to scoff at. When you needed a crucial turnover, it seemed like they almost always got it, especially Nashawn Wright, who's always around the ball. Despite that, I couldn't put them in the good category, as it felt like they gave up a lot of explosive plays, especially late in the year, when teams started to get more adjusted to that man coverage and that they were running, so they had to run more zone. And without the pass rush, because everything is interlocked with that pass rush, without that pass rush, you can't expect your corners to cover for 16 seconds at a time. So I couldn't put them in the good category, but for the body of work that they showed and the production that they got from guys who weren't even expected to make the team, to turn Nashawn Wright into a Pro Bowler, from a practice squad cut to a Pro Bowler, was amazing. So I put them in the above average category, but they still need to get a little bit better in that category as well. They need more depth, especially if guys are going to stay hurt like this. They need their guys to get healthy and be available to play. If all those things are in play, this could be one of the best secondary units in the NFL. And I thought for what they did in the 2025 season, while they weren't an elite unit, while they weren't necessarily a good unit, I forgot to bring up Chauncey Gardner-Johnson late in the season as well. While they weren't a good unit or elite unit, I definitely put them in the above average category. They held the fort while guys were out. A lot of guys came in and filled in while guys were out, and I respect that to the highest degree. Nashawn Wright became a Pro Bowler. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson filled in as best as he could for Jalen Johnson. Tyreek Stevenson had a resurgent year, in my opinion. I don't think he played enough towards the end of the season, especially when Jalen Johnson came back. And even when Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon came back, they showed flashes, especially in that postseason game against the Rams, what this secondary could have been if it was healthy. So, yeah, man, I put them in the above average category for that positional ranking. Quickly now, we move on to the safeties. The safeties were good this year. Jaquan Brisker, while he didn't have his best statistical year, he was able to stay on the field and help this team. Wasn't perfect. Pass coverage still remains a bit of a concern, but that playoff game that he had against the Rams, he left it all out on the field. He's a very good blitzing safety, a very good run stuffing safety as well. Plays way better when Kyler Gordon is right there next to him. For some odd reason, I always notice a correlation. When Kyler Gordon plays, he's 10 times better. When he's not playing, he's 10 times worse. And then what do we even need to say about Kevin Byard? He was the league leader in interceptions this year. Had many moments for this team this year as well. Was a veteran presence on this team. Made the Pro Bowl. Will possibly be an All-Pro as well. I think he did make an All-Pro team. Probably a first-team All-Pro as well. This dude played well, and I remember when they signed Kevin Byard, we all thought he was washed since the Eagles let him go. Pretty sure the Eagles would probably be asking for him back at this point. I really liked the way he played this year. Had some moments where, his lack of speed did show at times, especially against teams like Detroit and Green Bay. But overall, when you put him in a pure robber coverage, he was able to take away the ball, man, and it felt like he was always around the ball when you needed him to. Had a lot of dropped interceptions this year as well, and so there were opportunities for more. I thought the safety group played really well. The Bears do have a decision coming up on both of these guys, as I think both Byard and Brisker are free agents, and I don't know if they're going to be able to keep both. If you ask me who I would want more, I'd probably take Byard. But I do like Jaquan Brisker. He's one of my favorite players on the team. He provides a spark for this team that every team needs. And I thought they really performed well. They were one of the reasons why this back end didn't completely fall apart. And there was a lot of games where those safeties just completely took over the game. I think back to the Raiders game in which Kevin Byard had like 3 interceptions by himself. So, I thought he played very well. I thought Jaquan Brisker played very well. We'll see what the Bears do in the offseason when it comes to paying these guys. But I put them in a good category for this team in the 2025 season. All right, quickly, special teams. The year started off really bad for special teams. Missed kicks, bad punts, bad punt returns, bad kick returns, horrible procedure penalties. It was a struggle for special teams, but around mid-season, especially after that Commanders game, around mid-season, this special teams unit made a switch. Something clicked in their minds when a switch happened around that Cincinnati Bengals game, and from that moment on, this special teams unit was lights out. You started to see Devin Duvernay return the ball much better. He had a lot of good punt returns and kick returns that set the Bears up for wins that they possibly wouldn't have had without him. They didn't muff any punts this year. The punt returns even got better. Cairo Santos got way better as the season went on, kicking in devastating wins here at Soldier Field, and just was lights out. Kept us in games a lot of times, especially those 2 Packers games. Kept us in it, and we won both of those Packers games at Soldier Field. Richard Hightower had the special teams coverage revamped as well, and they started to give up less and less yards on kick returns as well as the year went on. After that Charlie Jones kick return in Cincinnati, that sparked the change for this special teams unit, and as the season went on, they started to show why they can be a really good elite unit. And anytime you recover an onside kick, man, that's a big bonus to your special teams as well. I thought that Richard Hightower coached his ass off on special teams, if I do say so myself. Excuse my language, but this was one of the strengths of this team, and especially in a league where special teams can be a strength and a weakness. You can ask the Los Angeles Rams about that, about their special teams. You want that to be one of the stronger areas of your team because you don't want to have mistakes on special teams, because those are back-breaking as well. But yeah, I thought they performed really well this year. I put them in the elite category. I thought they did a really good job, especially as the year went on. And finally, man, we reached the end of this positional ranking and recap. Going into the offseason with the coaching staff. And what can you say about this coaching staff that hasn't already been said? 11-6, come in, you get the 10th rated offense in the NFL. I'm sorry, the 6th rated offense in yards. The 10th rated offense in passing, 3rd in rushing. This man, Ben Johnson, just came in and completely changed the culture. You're winning tight games. You're coming back on teams. This was a coaching staff that hired superstars all the way around. Ben Johnson, defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle, Eric Bieniemy, what's the dude, Al Harris, Antoine Randall L, JT Barrett, Dan Rochar. This coaching staff, none of this really happens without this coaching staff at the helm. It felt like, the players get a lot of credit. They're going out there playing. But when you got a good support system around these players, especially one that we have been talking about for years, that the Bears had not had in years, it felt like Ben Johnson coming in, once he got adjusted to things, it was leagues different than any other Chicago Bears head coach that we have had this season. And this coaching staff was very open. They were very transparent. They took a lot of accountability this season, even when they had mistakes. You could bring up the 4th down conversions. You could bring up, the penalties. All that plays a role in there, and those are all things that the time management, all that plays a role. And yes, while those are things to get better at, situational play calling at times in the red zone, while those are things to keep mind of, and those are things to be aware of, when you have an elite coaching staff and have an elite offensive head coach like Ben Johnson, who knows how to rally the troops, he was one of the main reasons why this team was in the situation that it's in. He comes in, he installs a great offense for your quarterback. While it's not perfect, he's learning in it, and he showed more talent than any other quarterback has shown in this franchise's history. He gets the running game going. He comes in, makes changes on the offensive line. This guy, was one of the top head coaches in the NFL. He was, a coach of the year candidate, man. I mean, this was just a great year, and it couldn't have happened without this coaching staff. While Dennis Allen's defense wasn't great in a lot of statistical categories, he did have moments. Anytime your defense can take away the ball the most in the NFL, that's a plus. They got situational stops most of the time when they needed to. The running backs with Eric Bieniemy, they were running harder. The wide receivers, they got better. Even though there's things that they can improve on, they got better with their route running. So it was very, very refreshing to see a coaching staff that came in, and for the most part, they came in and you see it. They care about winning. They hate when they lose. They want to try to win every game. They're disrespectful to rivals as well. They weren't trying to be friends with anybody. They were focused on the Chicago Bears and getting these players up to a standard that they set. And I felt like the players matched that energy that the coaches were putting out there, and they reached those expectations and possibly even went past those expectations. And that's why the Bears were sitting in first in the NFC North and at 11-6, because these coaches came in and they set the bar, for what they wanted this team to be and what the standards that they needed this team to reach. And I thought they answered them perfectly. And, without Ben Johnson, you could say what you want about the players, and they got to go out there and play. But without Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen and all these guys coming in and just completely revamping this team and getting the stain of the other coaching staff out of here, I don't think this year happens without them. I'm really excited to see what they do next year, especially in a year 2 in a Ben Johnson system, year 2 in a Dennis Allen run defense, and you could really have something special going into next year in 2026. So coaching staff was possibly one of the most elite units on this team, and when it comes to playing the game of football, you need all units to be on the same page: offense, defense, special teams, coaching. And I felt like the Bears, especially with their coaching staff, was one of the most elite units in the NFL, in my opinion. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that will end my 2025 seasonal positional rankings and my recap for the Chicago Bears. What a magical season for Bears fans everywhere. Nobody thought we were going to be sitting where we are, sitting from a team that won 5 games last year to go on and win 11 games, to win the North, to win a playoff game, and then possibly, coming in within 15 yards of going to the NFC Championship game was nothing short of amazing. Is there things to improve on? Absolutely. We've gone over it in this video. But when you look at the Chicago Bears going forward, this is a team, if they are able to revamp on some positions in the offseason, especially the defensive line, this is a team that can really, really take the next step into becoming not only a playoff contender, but a potential down the line Super Bowl contender. I don't think this is a fraud. I don't think this is a fluke. You can tell that these guys running the team are a lot different than the guys running the team in previous years. This is not a Matt Nagy coaching staff situation. This is not a Matt Eberflus coaching staff situation. This is a team that has a certified head coach on their team. This is a guy who thinks he can go out there and win every game, and the players are responding to that. The Bears responded really well to a lot of adversity this year. This year was teaching them how to win and how to go through that adversity, and they responded, man. I can't say enough good things about this team. It was a magical season. Hopefully they can go on and improve the team even more, so when we get to a situation, when we get to the divisional round and there's 3 minutes left in overtime, we can get past that and go to the NFC Championship game and possibly compete for a Super Bowl. A lot of development has to happen before then. A lot of work has to happen in the offseason before then. But going forward, I think the Chicago Bears are a real threat in the NFC, and I think they put a lot of people on notice going into next year. So, that will wrap up my recap for the 2025 Chicago Bears. So it was a great year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you guys hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I drop one of these recap videos. I'm going to start putting these out a little bit more. I just got to get the chart updated again. If you guys can, follow me on TikTok and all my social media platforms, as I will try to go live on TikTok a little bit more. Basically, I like posting on all social media platforms as well. Make sure you guys leave your comments on what you thought about this video and anything that you disagree with or agree with. in this video. I would like to thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video to the end, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm out. Peace.